IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. Watch over 3,300 hours of content in their on-demand library on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for teams by visiting itpro.tv/Security Weekly and start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off standard or premium IT Pro TV memberships using the code SECWeekly30. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys, your employees, your contractors, and privileged users. 60% of online attacks are carried out by insiders. To stop these insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. Observe It combats insider threats by detecting risk activity, investigating in minutes, effectively responding, and stopping data lost. Give it a test drive at observeit.com/Security Weekly. Are you overwhelmed by the sheer volume and noise of alerts? Struggling to define priority while searching for context? Wondering why we're still playing telephone while attackers invest in technology to ease their efforts? It's time to make a stand and demand a different approach. Imagine spending your day doing the valuable work you crave. It's possible today with ServiceNow. Visit servicenow.com/SOAR, that's SOAR, to get more information and make the case for your better approach to security orchestration and automation. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I want to mention IT Pro TV because we just talked about web application security, and that's an area that if you're going to be involved in application security in any aspect, I think is one of those areas that commands that you stay up to speed at a regular basis, and having access to a library like IT Pro allows you to get that updated training. I mean, sure, you can go take a training class and that builds a great foundation for your foundational techniques that can be applied to all these new techniques. But to go learn about all those new techniques, I think IT Pro is a great, IT Pro TV is a great source for that.
What I tell people is find a good clipping tool. So this is, you know, like how do you condense Radar Page down to here's the apps we're dealing with, so that you get flags when stuff's happening, and then use resources like IT Pro TV, Cyber, whatever you need to know. Find good repositories of information so you can dive in there and say, I just saw this morning. It's a problem. I need to learn about it this morning. Yeah. And having resources like that is a great thing to be able to just jump on.
There's just so many different styles of attack. For example, deserialization bugs, they crop up all the time. And that's a good one where you may, I think it was JBoss. I could be getting them wrong, but I believe JBoss was one that had a deserialization bug. So that's one that you're going to get a flag. Right. Like, oh, I run JBoss. And then you're like, crap, how do deserialization bugs work?
Exactly.
Like, I think I got it now, right? Because I've been around long enough and beaten it into my head. But even if you've got experience in security, you can benefit from going to somewhere and learning about that bug again.
Trusted source. So that's step one. Build your trusted source base of things you know to look at so that you don't get sidetracked into a giant web of bizarre videos. 2, find a way to get notified about those things, and then 3, get yourself up to speed, because you're going to have to do that all the time. I mean, it's not something you can just go take a class and again, we were talking earlier about upper management. That's a tough sell. You're saying, I need to go take a class every 3 weeks. I mean, nobody's going to go for that when you say, oh, it's 5,000.
Yeah. How do you justify that?
And so your problem's going to be that you have to learn how to learn. I mean, that's one of the things you've got to do, and having these kind of resources is great.
I'm giving another talk. Wow, I'm working on writing all these talks. But I'm giving another one at the SE Social Engineering Conference, and one of my spins is, it's basically applying what I've learned from Business Security Weekly and reading some books about negotiating and sales, but applying that to security. And one of the things you're going to have to do, really in any IT position, and I think especially security, is go sell training to your management. Say, I want to take time off of work. 2, you're gonna have to pay for my travel, and 3, pay for my training. Right. So like, there's a cost associated with that. You have to justify. I mean, that's a sales thing, right? And so there are social engineering tactics, and value-based tactics that you can use to help make your case, which I think a lot of security professionals haven't spent enough time developing in order to go say a lot of sales, like I want to sell training to my manager, or I want to sell this new solution, or I've done this proof of concept and now I want to take on this new project. Not only got to sell it to my management, I got to sell it to my team members. On my security team, I got to sell it to my team members outside my security team. So there's a lot.
Paul's new book called How to Con Management and or Use Roofies to Get What You Want.
There you go.
Will be available soon. Yeah.
Well, I actually, as funny as that is, I think is a great point, because we look at it as these like slimy tactics, right? And what I've learned is that you could not be so slimy about them. Like there's a lot of transparency.
Selling isn't inherently slimy. It's all about what you're selling and why.
Right.
So if you're selling something for a perfectly good reason that makes good sense for your enterprise, I don't see anything slimy about that. I mean, using roofies might be a little much, but at the same time, if that's what it takes, and I'm not suggesting that, but the idea that you have to essentially con management into doing things is very commonplace, because they don't understand what you're asking for, and a lot of times they're applying weird principles to things that are these very gestalt rules where it's like, oh, well, the accountants all got trained years ago and nothing's changed, but it's like, wait, no, the IRS just changed the rules and they need training and they get training. Why don't we get training? And apps change every day. And yeah, it's a tough thing.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about, basically our news is about things you might have to go sell to management, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing is Atos is a company with open source solutions around containers. The managed OpenShift, which is Red Hat's container platform, emerging to create. And this is really where we're seeing Red Hat in their acquisition of CoreOS, and now this partnership really go to or approaching the point where if you're an enterprise and you want to run microservices and containers, we've got an awesome platform that we've built for that. And this could be something you're selling. You may be looking at this going, you know what, we should really use that. And you're going to have to go.
And now you're going to have to convince them.
And I think it's a really cool thing for the industry. Now you have a big player like Red Hat adopting these technologies and making it available to enterprises with all of that commercial support and being designed for the enterprise with the enterprise needs and problems in mind.
But as a side commentary to that, sometimes these are easier sells because the company's providing you with a lot of resources to sell it.
That's a good point, yeah.
Whereas you may have to go out and sell something that's not so well known, that's not so commercialized.
Right.
I remember years ago trying to sell people on Red Hat and other open source solutions, and them getting blown out of the water because Microsoft came in with a truckload of T-shirts and hats, and they all walked out and went, I think we want Microsoft. And it's like, why? And they're like, what? Hat, shirt, I'm good. And so you may still need those sales skills even when people commercialize up like this. And it's good to see good products being commercialized up, because then you don't have to work so hard to sell it.
Well,
but you need those skills.
And it's a great segue into security orchestration and automation, which you heard in our advertisement from ServiceNow. We've got a webcast with them tomorrow. They're a large company. Obviously, they're the global, one of the leaders in that IT management platform. Right, and they've developed products for security automation and orchestration, and there were a lot of smaller players in this space.
Not anymore.
Command was one. They got bought by Rapid7, and Phantom Cyber was a big player in this market. And I think that everyone likes to think, oh, we're not going to get bought. We're going to try and do this on our own, and that's a noble effort, but as we see some consolidation in a lot of different spaces in security, this is certainly one of them, because the software is just too useful to not, I think, glom on to something big. So Splunk has bought Phantom Cyber for $350 million. And I don't know if this is a good or bad thing as from a practitioner standpoint. Acquisitions can go a number of different ways. So Rapid7, of course, with Command, and I liked the Command technology. And we'll be having more discussions with Rapid7, who's also a sponsor of the show. And now Splunk is, and I think this makes sense to have a SIM vendor acquire that orchestration automation, because I think it's really solving some of those problems where you dump a SIM in and you're like, wow, I can't get anything useful out of this. But if you can automate and orchestrate some of those processes around your SIM, that makes sense. Now these are going to be integrated more tightly. I think that's a good thing. Now, the other interesting announcement is some new features from another company called Demisto, which does the same thing. they've updated their interface and increased their metrics and efficiency and things like that. You can read all the marketing.
Right.
I don't know what exactly it means because it's all marketing fluff, but people talk very highly about Demisto. They haven't gotten bought yet. So well, I don't know what that means for you, if you're shopping, but certainly if you've got ServiceNow and you've got Splunk, now you've got some awesome
automation tools.
Yeah, automation tools that will integrate with your platform.
Right.
If you don't have those tools and you're searching for something else, Demisto can be an option. So it's interesting how that space played out in enterprise security. A lot of consolidation. Who knows? Maybe it'll all be consolidated. I don't know.
That seems to be the modern way, is just things consolidate quickly because it's easier to go out and buy a good product that's already sort of been vetted in the marketplace.
Well, here's what I think happens, and we saw this with UEBA. We saw companies that did UEBA, EUBA, end user behavior analytics, right? And that's what they were doing. And then a lot of those players got bought up. Right. by SIM vendors, right? They got bought up, and SIM vendors offered their own services if they weren't going to buy a company. And the ones that remained that didn't get bought tend to pivot. So they and if they have to have some foresight, like some insights into what's going to happen in the future, and they say, well, now we're going to pivot into something like, we do this EUBA thing, but now we're doing this other thing too, and they tend to pivot. And that's where I see these different categories and spaces going. I think it's going to be the same thing for security orchestration automation.
Yep.
Certain players are just going to get gobbled up. The other players that are left, in order to compete, are going to have to
branch out.
If not pivot, not necessarily pivot into something completely different, but branch out, like you said, Doug.
They're going to have to expand. I mean, and that's pretty typical in all these industries, is that if you're left, so you're the only free swimming creature left in the pool, you're going to have to evolve and do something different, because there's a reason you got left, and so the feeding frenzy starts and everybody snaps up all the best morsels, and then there's some not so tasty morsels left maybe, and that may be telling you something like maybe it's time to do something, improve, change, enhance, and now you're a little bit behind the market if you got left there.
But see, I think the good ones, the ones that have good technology coupled with a good business and sales and marketing practice, they're able to go out and get some more funding to fund that research and development, to add on more features to stand on themselves, which I think is great.
If you are quality, you can do that without a doubt. And sometimes people don't get snapped up for other reasons, not because you're bad. Sometimes you want too much money. Yes. Sometimes you're unreasonable. Sometimes your product's not very adaptable to the needs of the big guys.
And sometimes you are an awesome organization, have a great product, great business, and you're too good, and a big player like Cisco is going to come along, and I mean, they're just going to make you an offer you can't refuse. And
buy them out, boys.
Right, and you get bought out for a high value because you've got your shit together, basically. So
I agree.
Another acquisition, FishMe rebrands as Cofense.
I'm terrible at pronouncing. I think it's Covefy.
Covefy, I think. Yeah. So it does remind me of that.
I think it's Cofense is what it is.
After the word does anyway. Anyway, they got acquired. So if you're a FishMe customer, you may want to look into that. What else is in here? Trustwave is launching a proactive threat hunting service, which I find interesting. They're using the word proactive coupled with threat hunting. And I think threat hunting is a little more on the reactive side, because it's after something's already happened. It's after you've gotten breached. So
I guess it could be proactive, though. I mean, if you said, okay, we're going to try to envision new threats and go hunt those.
Sure. I think, proactive is a little misleading in that we really need to look at the dwell time, if you will, which is somewhat of a marketing phrase, but like how long an attacker is going to live inside your network, right? And if you're doing threat hunting effectively, what you're doing is you're cutting down on the attacker's dwell time.
Yep.
I think of the word proactive being about preventative, like preventing that threat from happening. Like in FishMe's case, right? I want to catch that before it actually reaches the end user's inbox, before they contract the malware. You're not going to be 100% effective, with combating those threats. So you do threat hunting to shrink that dwell time.
Yep.
So that's where I think, and Trustwave has a service to do that. It sounded like they were a little more focused on the endpoint EDR type services to do that. I think threat hunting should be a more kind of cohesive process. of course, getting stuff from endpoints is tricky. There's a lot of variables with logs and endpoints. My take on it is the network is a very reliable, probably the most reliable source. Again, I'm biased. I mean, that's what we do at now active countermeasures, which you'll be hearing more about in upcoming episodes. But, you know, I think the network is a place to look. But it's still shrinking that dwell time. And speaking of that, CrowdStrike, they call it breakout time. So their new marketing term is breakout time. And according to them, it's the time it takes for an attacker to escape. So it's different from dwell time. They're saying, and again, it's marketing terms, but it's good to think about it this way. So dwell time is like once they get in, how long they can stay on that one system. They're saying breakout time is the time it takes for an attacker to escape the initial, they call it the beachhead machine, which I hate that as a marketing term, the initial compromise, and then go on to compromise something else.
Okay, so I call that the escalation time.
Yeah,
I've always called that the time to escalation. Was what I was a TTE was what I was.
We call it lateral movement too. I mean, it's nothing new, right? It's lateral movement.
But it was, and it's an important number. I mean, it's like how this was back when you talk about server hardening or endpoint hardening, and you start saying, okay, how good is this box? How resilient is it? Because when they start escalating, that's when things really go awry. I mean, if they've taken one box...
Yeah, I think it's two things, too. This escalation could be they're escalating privileges.
Oh, yeah, it can be a whole bunch of things.
Right, and it's also escalation of other things they're able to obtain from that. So they're still on that one system.
Right.
But they're able to glean domain admin credentials from it because those credentials.
And that's
very basic example.
That's why I was calling server hardening.
Mimikatz, I've got domain credentials because they were cached on the system, which is morphed into a lot more complex and interesting style of attacks. But at the basic level, right, I escalate my local privileges, I can escalate my domain privileges, and I haven't left that one box because that stuff is just
as soon as it's just to me, that was that point where it escalates. So it's like, okay, I logged into an anonymous account through FTP. Okay, cool, big deal. But then the moment I can go beyond that, I get a root shell, or I get access to shadow file or whatever I get access to. I have now escalated my attack, and the likelihood that attack's going to become more of a problem.
Right. Then you start jumping machines once you've done that.
Then as soon as I get a set of credentials, I can say, now let me see if I can log into this other machine over here, and all of a sudden
then things get really bad.
Really, really bad, really fast. Especially if you have vague trusts where we believe this server's safe because, nobody can log into it remotely, but they can log into it from the server they just compromised. And I've seen that a bunch of times where they did that kind of stuff. And they're like, well, how did they get in? And it's like, we're firewalls protecting us. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's not protecting you from your own stuff. Yeah.
This article from Radware is very marketing. There's a ton of marketing speak in here that we normally kind of poke fun at a little bit because we can't. And the frustrating part is that Radware could have a really great solution, but it doesn't come through because they're using terms. Well, they say neutralize evasive zero-day malware threats with cloud malware protection service,
and just alt the fiduciary harm.
Yeah, it's like, come on now,
synergistic.
Tell us what you do. And I was talking with someone who was an analyst actually, and I think brought up a great point that I'm trying to integrate into my evaluation of vendors, right? And it's one thing, I mean, when we talk about like the problem, the solution, measuring it in those things that Michael St. Arcangelo talks about in a straight truck program that we use here as well. But one of the things that's interesting is putting context around it for people in the security community at first, like up front. Like, okay, I understand the problem, but before you start talking about the solution, which we understand could be a lot of things, tell us, like, is it an appliance? Is it an agent? Is it a log source? Is it like what is it?
It's a cloud-based distributed API that's absolutely secure,
right? And that doesn't help us. Like, so we're like, what? So how does that work? So like, draw the building. Like, what are the building blocks we're working with? Give us that context. Then talk about what the solutions are built on top of that, which could be a little more theoretical at that point, which is okay. But I think the problem is we kind of jump right to the theoretical. And in a lot of companies, skip the problem statement altogether. And I think this is a common problem in a theme we see in our industry, is those theoretical solutions and theories are what they lead in with. And that's exactly, and I hate to pick on Radware because, like I said, they could have a great solution. I'm not singling them out.
But their headline sucks.
Yeah, and whatever. But so, evasive zero-day malware, like, that's a very theoretical thing. And even like cloud malware protection service, like, that's a real theory. Like, what is that?
But it sounds scary. Evasive zero-day malware.
Lead in with what exactly the architecture looks like first.
That would be nice.
Then talk about, okay, how do you protect, like, zero-day malware is a real marketing thing. Like, how do you help us with malware?
Sounds all sexy.
It does. So, what else we got? Static analysis. So this is interesting, going back to our conversation with Farah, and it's one of the reasons why I asked this question. Again, Grammatech is saying that a groundbreaking new capability is connecting static analysis with dynamic analysis. Really stretching it in your marketing and PR efforts by calling that integration groundbreaking, as Farah pointed out, something we've talked about and actually done for some time. In fact, if you go to the big players, IBM, HP, I mean, they have all those tools branded and linked together already, and they've been working on that for some time. So it's
again,
we talked about how it's useful and ways to use it effectively, which I thought was great.
That's
but
marketing differentiation 101.
Calling it groundbreaking is not.
No, but you got to call it that and say, this is how we set ourselves apart and why you should pay us instead of them, because we're groundbreaking and they're not. And yeah, I mean, people have been doing this stuff for years. And I mean, I was talking, we were talking earlier about, I was talking about taking dynamics and creating new statics and all this. I mean, we were doing that when you could do it. You had to do it all manually. I mean, there was no big deal about that. So I don't know that it's groundbreaking. It's good to see people doing it, but I
realize that they're trying to make that differentiator, right? But that differentiator has to be thought of differently. Just slapping a groundbreaking new capability phrase in front of things doesn't make it a differentiator. And it's interesting because it doesn't even need to be unique. It just needs to be the one thing that you picked that you're going to run with to be your differentiator. And sure, there might be other people that even try to do it that way, but you do it the best in that way.
Paul's new book, Differentiating the Differentiators, will be out soon.
It's true. It's true. You have to do that. Differentiate the differentiators. And Sean D'Souza did a 2-part interview with us, the author of The Brain Audit, and talks about that. And the best example that he gives is the hotel. And hotels provide the same service to everyone at a fundamental level, right? Exactly. You pay them money and you get to sleep there, right? That's what a hotel does. But they chose, and you can pick a lot of different differentiators.
Exactly.
And they picked, you're going to sleep great at our hotel.
Right.
And so you get your choice of 14 different pillows. You get a sleep consultant. Their rooms start on the 7th floor, so they're furthest away from things. There's essential oil diffusers in the room. I mean, they went all out and went like above and beyond to say you're going to sleep better at our hotel, and that's their differentiator. Now, other hotels may claim you're going to get a great night's rest, but
our sheets cost by the hour.
Yeah, but they picked that one thing and went with that. And I think when we talk about insecurity, we need to start identifying companies that do that and coaching companies to choose those kind of paths, because as we've seen, mentioned RSA, there's going to be thousands of vendors there. Right. What's your differentiator?
What makes you special?
Yeah. Like, what's special about your hotel?
But we also have to be careful to not put too much of our side into the other side, because they're also marketing not just to us anymore.
That's true.
So there was a time when this was a very specialized field, and it still is. But all of a sudden, there's all these other people out there that want in, that don't necessarily want to be into the field as much as they need to understand it, because they're CIO-level people, they're CEO-level people who are making high-dollar decisions for how that company is going to adopt or differentiate themselves. And so now it's differentiating the differentiated differentiators. And, yeah, figure that one out. But I mean, the point is that at some point they also are marketing to other people, so we get a lot of that sort of crosstalk stuff, and it does make things confusing for everybody involved, because we want to see the nitty-gritty. Other people need to see the evasive zero-day malware genetic synergy clouds that are coming over the horizon, because that's their speak. And so marketing is trying to play both sides of the fence. So it does make things complicated.
Absolutely. Well, that rounds out the enterprise security news for this week and the show for today. Doug, thank you very much. Thanks to Farah from NetSparker. That concludes this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.